Well, hello, Glue Troopers. Max's Models here. First off, I want to thank everyone who made the live stream. And if you did, then you already heard the story I'm about to tell in today's video. So I took the Jupiter 2 out to putty it up and sand it off. And since I was putting the putty on my finger, I didn't really think I needed to cover the glass yet. I wasn't ready to paint, but sure enough, a little bit got on the glass. I think it was on the side of my hand. And I used everything available to get it off. I tried swab, sanding, polishing, scraping off with an X-Acto knife. Even wound up taking the Dremel to it with the burnishing pad and everything. No luck. That windshield was messed up, and I was unable to fix it. So I pulled it out, and while I was handling the model, it slipped out of my hand because that shape doesn't really conform to your hand very well. Hit the ground with an earth-shattering kaboom, and hit so hard that turned out one of the landing gear pieces was snapped off and was missing. And I started looking around, and it went all the way across the room sideways. I managed to hide behind a table leg, but I found it. And it was damaged, but usable. So I glued it back together, and while I was at it, I started working on all the landing gears because I realized they were going to need a lot of cleanup, massive gaps in these things, partly due to the size of the model. And I even painted the landing gear bays a silver leaf to have a little contrast against the aluminum, but when it all dried, you couldn't really tell the difference. And then it was get the thing ready to go ahead and put some primer on, and it was prime and sand, prime and sand, prime and sand. It got pretty redundant after a while. And what's hard is the surface areas were large, and you put the primer on it, see everything you missed. It took the day, but finally got it more or less acceptable. And while I was working on it, I was talking to a glue trooper on the phone, Steve over at Steve's Model Mania, and I was leaning forward in my red chair, which is on wheels, to reach for something, and the chair shot out from under me like a bar of soap shooting out of your hand, and I hit the ground with an earth-shattering kaboom. So not only did I wind up crashing the Jupiter 2 harder than they did on the pilot episode of the TV show, I wound up crashing myself as well. I hit the ground so hard I managed to rearrange all my models on that glass shelf without even touching them. So after leaving a dark cloud of blue language hovering over the TARDIS, I got back to work, and it was the same thing. It was looking good, but there were still little areas, so more putty, more sanding, more priming. And working on the landing gears, I could not get those seams to disappear no matter how hard I tried. I even tried using some Mylar tape that I had left over from my radio control days. That stuff's pretty good, and it matches the aluminum perfectly. But it just didn't look quite right. Something was missing. So back to sanding and putty and sanding and putty some more, and then finally shot a coat on it and started to look pretty good. But some of the mistakes I made were showing through. Just, between hitting the floor and everything else, I dinged it up a little bit. So I go back to the landing gears, and I wound up using the Mylar to cover up some of the seamed areas. But one of them in the back, I've decided this one's just got so much distortion. No matter how much I grind away, it just won't smooth out. So I came with the idea of let's cut out a piece of stock styrene, real thin, lay it on there, and then put the Mylar over that. And sure enough, beautiful. Looked great. So with that resolved, I had to cut the new windshield. Fortunately, I have some clear stock styrene. Used the windshield itself as a template. Scored it. Didn't cut it. Scored it. And then was able to go ahead and get it bent to the right shape. It's like crack. This tool, which is made for working with photo etch, was perfect for getting the parts to crack evenly but not break. And since it's made for folding photo etch parts, it worked. You had to be very careful because it'd be easy to break the plastic off, but I was able to score it and get it to crack down the line without breaking off. Once that was done, all I had to do was deal with the windshield frame. I used some small aluminum Mylar strips for that. Then it was one more time to prime the spaceship and then paint it. While I was waiting for it to dry, I finished off the little Glencoe, what I call the Ed Wood flying saucer. Neat little kit. I enjoyed it. dolled up the cockpit a little bit. Just very, very fun. Two of the decals are salvageable. The big red one wasn't, but that's okay. It looks fine the way it is. So once I got the Mylar strips onto the new windshield, it was a matter of getting it inserted and then getting the landing gears on. And I had to hold it in a weird position to get the windshield to sit in the right place for the glue to harden. Unfortunately, I did get a little interior smudge, but I was like, you know what? Good enough. And once the landing gears and the atomic motor were on, she was pretty much done. I decided to weather it a little bit. There's no way that this thing would have gone through what they went through and remained in totally pristine condition. I mean, for Pete's sake, it was hit by asteroids. So I decided to put a little atmospheric weathering on and a few little minor micrometeoroid strikes and things like that. Just a little, give it a little bit of character. And put a little mud down at the seam of the door because that's where they're always going in and out. There's going to be some seepage and stuff in there. So that's what she looks like, and she's pretty much finished now. I use the weathering kits to add a little bit of color, and you're like, oh, look, we got hit by a blue asteroid and something like that. And it just give it a little pizzazz there, make it what you want it to be. So now she sits atop my science fiction shelf, which is her permanent home. And that's where we're at with that. Well, guys, that was the story of building the Jupiter 2. Take care of yourselves, and as always, model on.